Hello, my name is Omar Cuello. I am a student of bachelor's program in foreign language with emphasis in English at the Universidad Nacional Abierta y a Distancia UNAD, ECEDU. Today I will present and defend my research proposal titled English Vocabulary Teaching in Rural Context. A case study at Betania Educational Institution, Pueblo Nuevo, Córdoba. I would like to share a simple image. A classroom, 23 kilometers from the nearest town, no textbooks, no computers, no internet. 40 children who arrive every day ready to learn English. That classroom is the reason this research exists. For 2 years, I have been teaching English to those children as a student teacher as part of my training to become an English language teacher. And for 2 years, I asked myself the same question. How do we teach English meaningfully when resources are nearly absent and when students are afraid of being seen to fall? That question is what this research attempts to answer. Well, the data sheet on screen presents the formal information for this proposal. The title of this is English Vocabulary Teaching in a Rural Context, a case study at Betania Educational Institution, Pueblo Nuevo, Córdoba. The type of paper is a research project. The research line is education, culture and interculturality, qualitative case study with action research elements. The author, my person, Omar Cuello. The advisor is the Magister Norma Zuleima Garcia Fonseca. And I want to draw attention to the 5 keywords because I believe they capture the heart of this study better than any summary could. English vocabulary, rural education, gamification, low-cost strategies, vulnerable context. 5 words, all connected, and all of them matter. Here we can find 2 boxes. The first box on screen describes the context precisely. In the rural setting of Los Limones, Pueblo Nuevo, Córdoba, 4th and 5th grade students from the ages of from 9 to 12 or 13, socioeconomic stratum 1, proficiency level A minus, receive only 2 hours of English per week from a non-specialist teacher with no textbooks, no digital resources, and no home internet access. That is the actual problem here. Is just the lack of resources? No. Resources matter, but they are not the deepest issue. The deeper problem is what those conditions produce over time. Effective barriers, conventional methods, repetition details, and written exercises. Fail to sustain engagement, produce minimal vocabulary attention, and reinforce shame, fear of error, and reluctance to participate. The clearest evidence of that problem is not a test score. It is a phrase that I hear constantly across different groups in different years. Students do not ask, "Teacher, when is the next class?" They ask, "Teacher, when are we going to play again?" I have heard that question from fourth grade, who became fifth grade, and from new third grade, who arrived this year for the first time. Different students, different years, same reaction. That pattern, more than any assessment result, tells me what conventional instruction alone had failed to produce. Students who are eager to return to the English class. The second box states the research question. How can low-cost gamification strategies facilitate English vocabulary acquisition and reduce affective barrier among 4th and 5th grade students in a rural education context with limited technological resources? Most research on gamification assumes digital access. This study explored an unexplored territory, game-based learning with zero technology in an extreme resource scarce setting. Now let's see the objectives. The general objectives shown as the top of the slide is to explore how low-cost gamification strategies can facilitate English vocabulary acquisition and reduce effective barriers among 4th and 5th grade students in a rural educational context with limited technological resources. And there are 3 specific objectives. Structure how this general aim is pursued. The first, to identify the vocabulary learning needs to effective barriers of students in this rural context. The second, to design and implement low-cost gamification strategies adapted to the specific constraints of this educational sharing. And the third, to evaluate the impact of these strategies on students' vocabulary acquisition and attitude toward English learning. About the literature review, the theoretical framework. Well, the theoretical foundation rests on 3 frameworks that work together to explain why game-based learning should help students in contexts like Los Limones. The card 1, we can see the vocabulary acquisition. The theory, drawing of Nation and Schmidt, the core principle is that meaningful acquisition requires multiple space exposure in memorable context. Not one encounter with a word, multiple, and not passive ones, but emotionally and socially engaged ones. Does a game provide that? Yes. And that is precisely why it's now just playing. The card number 2, Krashen's affective filter hypothesis. Anxiety and low confidence block language input from being internalized even when the input is comprehensible. In my classroom, that filter was visible from day one. Older students and those with extra age status were genuinely reluctant to participate, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being mocked. That changed. Today, those same students speak with ease inside and outside the classroom, without hesitation and without fear. Games lower the filter. Now, because they are entertaining, but because they normalize imperfection. And the card number three, Vygotsky sociocultural theory. Learning is social. Group games create exactly the collaborative conditions where students achieve together that they cannot achieve alone. The peer coaching that happens spontaneously during a memory game is now a distraction. It is Vygotsky's zone of approximal development in action. Three frameworks, three explanations for the same phenomenon. Continue with the literature review. And speaking about the empirical background. Well, the empirical support comes from the three geographic layers. The card number four, international studies. U documented significant improvement in vocabulary outcomes and gamified EFL settings. Rababov confirmed that gamification enhanced lexical acquisition. Voluntary found positive engagement outcomes across diverse EFL contexts. The international evidence is robust, but none of those studies resemble Los Limones. All assume digital access. In the card number 5, we can see the Colombian context. Fandiño, Parra, Hoyos, Pipicano, and Barbosa Corredor all documented the same structural problem. Bilingualism policies designed for urban schools consistently fool rural teachers and students. Those studies place this proposal inside a live and urgent national conversation. And in the card number 6, we can see the local context. No prior studies exist as Los Limones campus. Herrera Ochoa offers the closer related work on pedagogical strategies for rural at UNAT, but the specific combination of gamification, zero technology, and the Colombian Caribbean rural context remains unexplored. This study fills that gap. There is not a coincidence of thinking, it is a necessity. Now, speaking about the methodology. The methodology slide shows for columns. The design. This study is qualitative, using a case study approach with elements of classroom action research. The scope is explorative and descriptive, cross-sectional, running from February to June 2026. The choice is deliberate. My research question asks how and why, and not how many. Now let's speak about the participants. 40 students, 4th and 5th grade, from the age from 9 to 12 or 13, socioeconomic stratum 1, proficiency level A minus, pre-basic. Now let's speak about the instrument. The daily field diary, semi-structured interviews with selected students, participant observation with structure, checklist, photographic documentation, and periodic performance assessment. 5 sources, cross-referenced. The triangulation is what makes the finding credible. And the strategies. The strategies used were flashcard games, memory games, word searches, TPR activities, and group competitions. All teachers made, and here I want to say something fundamental. Those materials were not generic. A student at Los Limones has never visited the zoo. They see every day a burro, a mulo, a pisingo, a coca. No one of the most frequent questions I received was, "Teacher, how do you say pisingo in English?" That question acquired me to do some my own research, context-specific vocabulary built from the student's own reality. It's something no commercial textbook or foreign app can provide. That is not a compromise, that is a pedagogical strength. Now speaking about the results. The results are organized around 4 categories. The first is the student engagement. Higher active participation, voluntary response, visible employment, and request to extend game time. The memory game became the flashing activity. 2 students competing individually, scoring for their team. The dynamic were extraordinary. Nervousness, tension, laughter, peer coaching from the bench. That is not it. It's over there. A student can be without knowing a single word, but they watch their opponent reveal card position. They gradually associate each word with its image. By the end of the session, they know the vocabulary without realizing they're learning it. Now let's speak about the motivation. Students described games as fun and different. Some practice vocabulary outside of class. That had never happened before. Speaking about the effective responses. Well, at the beginning, older and extra age students were visible reluctant. Shame and fear of being mocked. I never forced anyone. I always asked for volunteers. What changed the dynamic was this. The most confident students also made mistakes. Once hesitant students saw that, they crossed the threshold. Students who had barely spoken were calling out, "Me, teacher, my turn, I'll go again," and so on. A complete reversal. And about the implementation context. Handmade materials worked. Rural solidarity became a genuine pedagogical asset. creativity overcame resource scarcity. Now let's speak about the discussion. This slide shows three theories connected to the finding. The first was about Krashen. Krashen confirmed the affective filter was real and visible to this classroom. But this study extends his framework in one important way. Krashen described a generalized emotional filter. What emerged here is something more specific: shame. The social pain of being publicly seen to fail. In a context where grade repetition is already a visible mark, reducing shame required tasks where even the most confident students made mistakes, where no one could guarantee a win, and where participation was always voluntary. Let's speak about the nation. Nation supported. The memory game provided exactly what Nation and Smith described: multiple, spaced, emotionally memorable encounter with the same vocabulary. The mechanism works. And speaking about Vygotsky, Vygotsky extended. The zone of proximal development activated consistently during group games. But here is what this study makes visible. Affect in a prerequisite for sociocultural learning. Students who were still agement could not enter the collaborative zone. Krashen had to come first. Once shame was reduced, Vygotsky's mechanism activated naturally throughout peer coaching and team competition. And finally, the statement at the bottom of the slide, which I consider the most important sentence in this entire presentation. Rural contexts are coherent realities, not deficient version of urban schools. This is not just a philosophical position, it's a pedagogical and policy claim with real consequence. Now, speaking about the conclusions and implications. Well, the key conclusions. We can say that gamification, even with the simplest materials, produce meaningful, effective, and participatory changes in rural EFL classroom. Community solidarity and students' curiosity are pedagogical assets, not deficits. 5 specific conclusions support this. First, effective transformation is achievable with zero technology resources. Second, shame operates as a distinct barrier requiring target design. Third, triangulation across multiple instruments is analytically essential, not optional. Four, the dual role of teacher researchers is an asset, not a liability. And fifth, rural contexts are coherent realities with their own strengths. Speaking about the implication, for teachers, qualify of design matters more than qualify of the quality of materials. For instructions, for the institutions, support innovation without damaging immediate qualifier results. For policymakers, the National Bilingualism Program needs rural specific frameworks. For teachers, education programs like one at UNAT incorporate rural methodological training. Future lines. Longitudinal studies track vocabulary retention over time. Multiple site comparison across rural context. Dedicated investigation of change as distinct construct in EFL and participatory design involving family and community in the learning process. The work does not end here, it continues. Speaking about the references, the references on screen include the 8 key sources that anchor this proposal, all formats in APA 7th edition. The complete reference list is included in the written proposal submitted along this defense. I want to close by returning to where this research began. A classroom 23 kilometers from the nearest town, 40 children, no textbooks, no technology, and a student who, after the first game-based session, asked me not when is the next class, but teacher, when are we going to play again? That question is the answer to the so what and of this research. It reveals something 2 years of conventional teaching had not produced: a student who want to come back to the English class. Cardboard and makers, context-specific vocabulary, a memory game with predictable results. That is enough to begin. The work continues. Thank you very much for your attention.